The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome to Canary Cry News Talk. It is May 31st, 2017. My name is Gonz. Basil is still out in the mission field, and so I'm flying solo again, but hopefully we'll cover some news here that relate to what's happening out there in the world, and there's a lot going on. You know, there's so much happening that it's kind of hard to pick on the palette of topics to cover. Everything from transhumanism to everything about Bitcoin that I've been really looking into recently. Obviously, politics, the Seth Rich murder. I continue to keep my finger on the pulse on that stuff. I haven't commented too much simply because I don't necessarily have primary sources or anything like that. I'm just looking from afar, and I do overall believe that Seth Rich, along with Sean Lucas and even that mysterious death of a federal prosecutor, Barrington J. Wisenot Jr., I believe, found dead in Florida. It just seems like there's a lot of bodies piling up, and it seems like the Podesta Clinton arm of things are guilty, and at the same time, I have to take pause and not get too excited about the possibility of justice just because they've gotten away with it for this long. You know, what's going to change? That being said, I personally do believe in the pursuit of justice in this area, and I fully stand behind those people in the truth community doing that. At the same time, I know that there is an ultimate end and an ultimate justice that is coming that involves these things, and the day he will wipe away every tear, that's the day I'm looking forward to. You know, we can see justice in court and stuff like that in this life, but ultimately we're looking for that final justice, right? And that's that great return of Jesus Christ and setting things back in order. But until then, there's a lot of things happening and unfolding, and it's all just this really intricate weave of stories and topics and ideas that are really infiltrating the minds of men these days. And, you know, I think video game culture, science fiction culture, it's bred a sort of atmosphere that allows for more fantastic possibilities to be imagined and ultimately manifested. And again, when we talk about the crazy, supernatural, paranormal areas of life coming together and really brought to life by the digital medium, we are talking about creating that unseen world through a seen medium, and through our eyes, through our minds, through our imagination. We are literally manifesting these things through this technology and all that. And so keeping that perspective in mind, let me run through some stories here, and we'll talk about some different areas that I want to get into with it. But first off, I wanted to mention the missile that North Korea launched as a test, and then the United States launching a interceptor missile, I believe, also a test missile as a sort of a response. That's the last I saw of it. Again, I don't keep minute-to-minute track of this stuff, but I wanted to bring it up because in light of these events unfolding, there have been several alliances forming in Asia, and one of them, Reuters reported, Japan PM says he wants to work with China to resolve North Korea crisis. And it says here, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan told China's top diplomat on Wednesday that he would like to work with China to try to rein in North Korea's nuclear and missile program. Now, we've talked about China before, but, you know, just briefly and what they're into. There are articles out on the New York Times. Headline is China outsmarting America in AI. And there's this sort of race for AI. And that's been a major part of corporate integration. It's going to be a major part of Bitcoin. And that's another area I don't think most people are considering. They're getting really excited about Bitcoin. But there's an artificial intelligence angle to this that will fundamentally affect that sort of decentralized model, and keep it decentralized, but have that ability to run commerce. An artificially intelligent company by itself running, not run by humans, maybe some maintenance, operated by humans for, some payout. But other than that, it runs on its own, becoming smarter and smarter. This sort of thing, it sounds exactly like some kind of crazy science fiction apocalyptic movie. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about this cryptocurrency digital world in connection to AI and in connection what we're talking about here with China. There is a race. I don't think it's one faction or one country necessarily. I think it's groups of scientists and people all sort of trying to crack the code with certain things and make things smaller and more complex, yet more simple. A lot of things that they can't do is replicate the malleability or the sort of simplicity of the human brain. Obviously, it's very complex, but there is this ability to process information and use a level of energy that is very difficult to generate at an artificial level. So, they have problems. They have things that they need to solve in order to completely replicate the human brain in the way that they want to, in sort of an artificially intelligent way where, it becomes sentient, it becomes, it achieves personhood, that sort of thing. So anyways, so China has been at the forefront of this stuff. And in addition, them, Russia, space.com saying China, Russia advancing anti-satellite technology, according to a U.S. intelligence chief. And, the whole space wars thing, I know it's kind of a tainted topic now because of the whole flat earth movement. And I understand the sentiments of, thinking that it's all lies, and that is absolutely possible. But at the same time, I think even if you are a flat earther, to close off and say that, there isn't a possibility that the lies of NASA, the lies of space agencies and everything else is not just covering up a flat earth. Maybe they are covering up something entirely different. You have to leave that possibility open. And given certain prophetic passages, I do believe that there is room for some sort of space colonization or, occupation. And I mean that in like the sense of, them occupying space in some way. Obadiah 1 verse 4 about them nesting in the stars. That really is the one. I know it's talking about Edom. I know it's talking about that ancient Hebrew context, but at the same time, I find it really interesting that that verbiage would be used here. I understand that the flat earth, sort of hyper conspiracy type thing, and I'm going to use that term hyper conspiracy because I think it's appealing to a really deconstructive view of the world that says, basically that the lie is so huge that it is, it deceives even the, the physicists and the people that actually do experiments and run things and that sort of thing. So, hey, it's entirely possible. Again, I always say I've never been up there to see for it myself, so I will reserve my my total stance on it. At the same time, I think you can't just ignore some of these outlets and stories. I think we still have to report them, and that being stories like this one here about China, Russia advancing anti-satellite technology and having that space war be a part of the narrative of how things play out. And, if you consider the Antichrist calling fire down from heaven, right? Or actually the false prophet, I'm sorry. The second beast, points to the first beast. And, he's able to call fire down from heaven, Revelation 13, and also deceive the world through those miracles to build the image of the beast and issue the mark of the beast. This is all happening through the false prophet known as the second beast that comes out of the earth. So there's room for these types of space things that get involved. And especially, where does China, where does Japan, where does Asia fit into the prophetic picture as far as nation states? And, are they part of the whole Daniel 7 thing? And, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I think we just don't know, right? So we just have to sort of keep an open mind about this stuff. And I do believe, like always, prophecy, there are certain areas that interlock and overlap and fall into place. And it's like, yes, these things align exactly with scripture. But then, it doesn't interlock with everything. It doesn't completely fulfill everything. And that's that, final fulfillment where everything comes together. And, literally God says, hey, this is that which was written. This is what's being fulfilled. And that's kind of how things, prophecies and stuff, and many of them were, relayed in the New Testament. If you study some of the moments where Old Testament prophecies are told to be fulfilled in that moment, that's how it is, So I think we just have to keep tabs on this stuff. And I just think it's fascinating to see geopolitically Japan getting involved militarily and how that affects the East, Eastern end. I still think there's something to the Yamashita's gold that, World War II, the treasures that were found that Japan looted from China, as China, all the Silk Road treasures, gold, silver, precious metals, stones, jewels, all those things that came through the Silk Road into into China. Japan came in and looted all that stuff, hid it in the Philippines. And it is said that the United States and perhaps even the Emperor of Japan was still in on it to help recover some of the hidden treasures scattered throughout the Philippines. And these are the stories of history that aren't told, right? The history books in our classrooms are very biased towards a certain view, a certain worldview. And at the same time, the concept or the theory behind what came out of, the United States, and also maybe in some sort of backdoor alliance with Japan and maybe even the Nazis in general, is the funding of a breakaway civilization. Where did the black budget get all this extra cash? Well, the taxpayers are paying it. Yeah, but what about the really deep covert operations beyond simply just the black budget stuff? How is that being funded? Well, it's entirely possible that this sort of treasure that was discovered and in the hands of, again, very few, were able to control that and use it for their own benefit. And it's entirely possible that it is still part of being able to fund certain operations or briberies or whatever. Who knows? But it's just a fascinating place to look at because it's seldom discussed in the concept of a new world order, but that China's a big part of it. That Japan, as part of the Trilateral Commission, which, I guess as a side note news, Zbigniew Brzezinski passed away last week at the age of 89. He's the technocrat, the guy who founded the Trilateral Commission. And we had a conversation with Patrick Wood that talked all about that. And he really saw the Trilateral Commission as the push forward for a technocracy. And I think, he's right that everything that we're seeing develop all around us now is the technocracy, quite literally. And Brzezinski was a big part of that. And I always joke, and I'm half joking, but I'm also being half serious. And I deliver it as a joke because the implications of if it's true is pretty disturbing. But I always joke that these guys, Rockefeller's passing away, I really think they're trying to cryogenically freeze their bodies or their brains or something, because they must know what the cutting edge of this technology is, of mind uploading, where they're actually at, if they're even close at all, or they've achieved it, who knows. But it's just a fascinating thing to think about. And maybe, the influx of deaths of celebrity types that we're seeing is also in conjunction to, a sort of escape, a volunteering of this new program that exists, this sort of virtual world, almost like a religious sort of thing, a religious sort of sacrifice thing where it's, hey, you've been part of the system. Now this is part of your duty, and it will ultimately, maybe there'll be sold some goods. Like ultimately it's going to benefit humanity. and it's going to progress humanity to this great place. You will be one of the first to enter this Garden of Eden, right? We're going to mind upload you into this thing. You will be announced dead in this world, but you will be alive and well in this virtual world, and we'll take care of you. And, you can communicate with us. Who knows, man? That kind of crazy stuff might be going on. And I wouldn't put it past these types that have all the money, that have done, all the research, compartmentalized, and years of building up into being able to do stuff like this. And who knows what they're doing in trying to summon somebody. Again, it's the occult, it's the esoteric, it's the crazy, dark spiritual forces that watch over this world and control a lot of it and deceive humanity into doing their bidding and build their dark kingdom here. And I think we're seeing that all over the place. But in any case, last week I talked extensively about Antarctica and, the possibilities there. And I just wanted to touch on another story, just one in relationship to that. And it was published on the Herald Tribune, or Latin American Herald Tribune. Tiny Russian Orthodox Church serves scientists' spiritual needs in Antarctica. King George Island, Antarctica. A tiny Russian Orthodox church has been serving the spiritual needs of scientists and other personnel at Russia's Bellinghausen base in Antarctica since 2004. Holy Trinity Church, which was originally constructed in Siberia in 2002, is located at latitude 62 south, making it the southmost Orthodox church in the world. Russian Orthodox priests take turns serving at the church, celebrating Mass and attending to the spiritual needs of the base's personnel. The Reverend Palladium, who is currently assigned to the church, said it was a privilege to work in Antarctica, where he has been able to listen to God in a deeper way. Antarctica offers the opportunity to get to know yourself better and to get much closer to God, the Russian Orthodox priest told EFE. Visitors to the small church enter a world of Gregorian chant, burning incense and candles, providing a space for introspection. After 4 years, I'm convinced that Antarctica is a very special place whose landscape has an impact on visitors for the rest of their lives, the priest said. Now, the thing that really jumped out to me about this article here is the fact that the Reverend is named Palladium. That's really strange. If you look up palladium, obviously it's a metal. It's defined as a chemical element with symbol PD and atomic number 46. It is a rare and lustrous silvery white metal discovered in 1803 by William Hyde Wollaston. He named it after the asteroid Pallas, which was itself named after the epithet of the Greek goddess Athena, acquired by her when she slew Pallas. Palladium, platinum, rhodium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium form a group of elements referred to as the platinum group metals, PGMs. So I don't know, just with the whole concept of alchemy and all that, it's just weird that the Reverend here is named Palladium down in Antarctica here. So I just wanted to touch on that. I don't want to linger too long in Antarctica because we've been looking at that a lot. But it does make you wonder, how this all ties together with the greater picture and, why basically the Vatican is down there, attending to the spiritual needs of the scientists. It all sounds very one world religion-y to me. And I think that's part of what the agenda of whatever they're going to reveal with Antarctica is to begin with. And speaking of the Vatican, it's just become so clear that the current Pope right now, the first Jesuit Pope, obviously, he's really ticking off a lot of Catholics too, which is really interesting. But it was reported on The Federalist in wake of Manchester, Pope Francis asserts equivalence between Islam and Christianity. This Pope's inclination to advance an ideological stance over rational judgment does not bode well for Catholicism or the future of the West. Willful blindness endangers both. And this Federalist piece is actually, kind of a hit piece on Islam. So, it gets into why the Pope is not mentioning Islam and not calling it for what it is, which is sort of buying into the misdirection here, because the New World Order elite type, whatever you want to call it, the Pope is definitely a spokesperson for them, and they have used Islam as a tool, right? Radical Islam and terrorism and all this stuff, it has been a tool by the elite to cause chaos, to destabilize, to do all those things. And that's a reality. That's why they are funded and armed by the United States and, Israel. The whole thing is just one big lie. And it's the same lie to have war ever since, the Rothschilds and some of those bankers got into power and started to control nation states and wars, and were able to successfully implement a debt-based economic system, which is basically economic slavery, especially into the United States with the whole Federal Reserve and all that. So it all ties together in the bigger picture of what's going on and who's behind it in terms of some of those familiar names. And then, obviously at the highest levels, these folks seem to believe and worship Lucifer as the one who gave knowledge. And why wouldn't they? The light bearer, they're the ones that hold all the keys to this sort of technology. And ultimately, I don't think it's going to be a good thing for mankind to be tinkering with that stuff. CRISPR, Cas-9 technology, DNA manipulation, that's all in the hands of, basic biologists can start doing it. I saw a story, which I can't seem to find, but basically they were talking about elementary school kids in an after-school club doing CRISPR, Cas-9 technology, doing gene editing on their own, which is, again, quite remarkable. And in fact, there was an article published in the Jewish Standard in the timesofisrael.com, cutting and pasting with DNA, Israeli scientists talk about genetic editing in Inglewood. And this was back from May 11th. And it goes through, all the great possibilities of CRISPR-Cas9 technology, how it works and all the mechanics of it. But let me just read you a paragraph at the end here. It says, quote, "There are some worries about CRISPR too. Does it give people too much power, make them godlike? Are we overstepping our limits when we use a technology that can make irrevocable changes not only in our bodies, but in our descendants as well? Will we have considered all unexpected consequences?" Which is a hard thing to do given that the consequences by definition are unexpected, before we allow revolutionary techniques to be used. These are all important questions. But Dr. Hendel, who's the guy who's quoted here in this article, or one of many doctors quoted here, can use these techniques to try to end childhood cancer, and that is an outcome devoutly to be wished. And certainly, yes, we would like to end childhood cancer. But as the article states, what about the unknown, unintended consequences, right? And IFL Science, I won't name the exact name of that, the website here, but they just published a headline: gene editing technique CRISPR-Cas9 may be causing hundreds of genetic mutations. And it says here, the gene editing technique CRISPR-Cas9, hailed as a major breakthrough for genetic modifications, may be introducing hundreds of previously unknown mutations into the DNA. A small study has found that the new method may cause mutations in off-target regions, but it's still too early to know if this is a common occurrence or an anomaly. So there you have it again. Things to look out for, right? We don't know. There seems to be some effects that we don't know about. And at the same time, there have been a lot of headlines and stories being published in the scientific community that talk about the progress and the genes discovered for various things. For example, Science Daily back on May 23rd, new genetic roots for intelligence discovered. And this new Atlas article that states 52 genes associated with intelligence discovered. A giant meta-study comprised of over 78,000 people has confidently identified 52 genes that scientists consider to be significantly associated with intelligence. While only constituting a fraction of the thousands of genes potentially associated with influencing intelligence, this discovery sets scientists on a fascinating path to understand the genetic roots of intelligence. So now it's affecting our intelligence. And, again, they're just coming up with all sorts of ways to solve problems that are seemingly here, these diseases and that sort of thing. And again, those are good things, but what price are we going to pay to solve some of those things and eradicate them at a mass scale level? And, looking at that, that is also another angle that's been discussed about the mark of the beast. So I won't, get into all the nitty gritty there, but I think you can start to see how all these elements, right? The economics, the gene manipulation, the geopolitical turmoil, which is tied to, and I didn't mention this earlier, but it's tied to the 2030 UN Sustainable Development Agenda. You know, we bring it up all the time, but it's because it's a real thing. That's a real program that is being pushed by the Pope and by, you know, a lot of the people that are in affiliation with the United Nations. And especially in the United States, they would like to go that direction with smart cities and bioidentification for everybody, you know, for security, you know, for cybersecurity, for protection, all that kind of stuff. And it does make you wonder what kind of false flags these elite have planned in the future, what kind of maybe cyber false flags or some kind of major meltdown in the Bitcoin, right? A major theft that happens. Something like that already happened with Mt. Gox, which is, you know, for people into cryptocurrencies, you would know what I'm talking about there. But these things are vulnerable because they are digital. They're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be decentralized. But, you know, some sort of economic crisis in the new medium of, you know, Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that, that can really shake things up. That can really change things around and accelerate the sort of lockdown that I believe the elite want to have, even in a space like Bitcoin. I think they don't necessarily have entire control over the decentralized model, obviously, because in order to take it down, they would have to take down, you know, hundreds of thousands of computers at once, not just, you know, one building or one location. So in that way, you know, Bitcoin is protected in theory. But, you know, for those who say that, you know, it's absolutely bulletproof, it's never going to be affected or infiltrated or anything like that, you got to get real. There's absolutely ways that Bitcoin can be compromised, not just from your own, you know, virtual wallet, but also at a mass scale level where, you know, they are digital digits, you know, inside a computer system, software network. So not only can it just disappear in a moment through an EMP or through any other means, but also if we're starting to talk about things like RFID or some sort of genetic manipulation that goes on, then we really are in the realm of the mark of the beast. We're right there. And I think, you know, mainstream media and entertainment media, they're absolutely trying to condition the masses into accepting this sort of thing. And my proof is this headline here from Movie Pilot. Misha Collins says Castile will return to Supernatural Season 13 despite being killed in the Season 12 finale. And it says here, the more unfortunate casualties turned out to be Castile and Crowley. Yes, Crowley. He wound up sacrificing himself in the end to trap Lucifer in the alternate dimension opened by the Nephilim's birth. Unfortunately, Crowley's sacrifice was made in vain, seeing as how Lucifer jumped back through the interdimensional portal right after. Nevertheless, it's unfortunate to see Crowley go, especially after his last act on Supernatural redeemed him for his past transgressions. Wow. Characters named Crowley, Castile, and a Nephilim birth opening up a dimension for Lucifer. Come on, folks. Do you think that they're just coming up with this out of the blue? Or is something else going on? So Basil will be back. I think he'll be back next week. I'm not sure. If not, then I'll do another one of these rants and share with you guys some stories and some of my opinions and thoughts of the stories. We'll get into more next week, but until then, think outside the cage.